You're not imagining it. The pressure, the setbacks, the feeling like something keeps pushing you harder than everyone else. This isn't bad luck. This isn't a rough patch. This is the moment life starts cornering you on purpose. And then there's that weird shift inside you, that odd space between you and the rest of the world, that I'm watching life happen, not living it, sensation. It's not you falling apart. It's the phase right before your third eye kicks open, the phase nobody warns you about, because it breaks down your old sense of reality first. In this audiobook, you'll finally understand why life suddenly feels inside out, why your luck tanked out of nowhere, why everything keeps crashing until you pay attention. And trust me, the explanation hits harder than you expect. Before we go further, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Then type, "I'm ready for the truth." Set your focus. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. You are not alone in the feeling that sits heavy in your chest tonight. That feeling that the world is not merely indifferent, but actively, personally, opposed to your happiness. That for every step forward you take, a hidden hand seems to push you back too. Your plans crumble. Your relationships fracture. Your health falters. Your finances evaporate. You call out into the silence, and the silence answers with a thunderclap of misfortune. You have asked, in your quietest, most desperate moments, "Why me? Why me?" You have framed it as bad luck, as karma, as the cruelty of a random universe. But what if you have been naming it wrong all this time? What if it is not cruelty, but a fierce and focused form of love? What if you are not being punished by God, but being bullied by Him? This is the central, staggering truth we must confront. The ordinary person believes life should be smooth, a gentle river carrying them to their destined harbor. But the person who is being prepared for something extraordinary, for a sight that transcends the physical, is not placed on a river. They are thrown into the forge. The heat is turned up, not to destroy, but to temper. The hammer falls, not to shatter, but to shape. This process is brutal. It is personal. It feels like bullying, because it is. It is the universe, God, source consciousness, whatever term resonates with your spirit applying pressure. And pressure is the only force in all of existence that creates diamonds, or opens eyes that have been sealed shut for a lifetime. Think of the greatest beings, the wisest souls, the most profound artists and leaders and mystics across history. Study their biographies, not for their triumphs, but for their tragedies. You will find a common thread, a period of immense, soul-crushing pressure, a dark night that seemed to have no dawn. They did not become wise in spite of their suffering. They became wise because of it. The suffering was the catalyst. It was the bully, shoving them out of the comfortable, familiar nest of their old perceptions. The ground had to fall away before they could learn they had wings. Your dark night, your series of misfortunes, your feeling of being targeted by fate. This is not a sign of your unworthiness. It is the opposite. It is the sign that you are being prepared for a vision so vast it requires your old self to be completely dismantled to make room for it. This book is not a collection of techniques. Techniques are for the curious. This is a map of the transformation for the chosen. And you are here, listening to these words, because on some level, you have already been chosen. The bullying has begun. You have felt its sting. You are in the crucible now. The question is not how to escape the heat, but how to understand it, surrender to it, and allow it to perform the ultimate alchemy, the melting away of the small you, so that the infinite you can finally see. This is the journey from being the victim of your life to being the student of a cosmic curriculum so intelligent, so precise in its brutality, it can only be called divine. The third eye is not a physical organ to be activated with a trick. It is the permanent, irreversible awakening to the reality that has always been there. It is the moment you stop seeing the bully's fist and see the sculptor's hand. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The universe doesn't whisper, it shoves. Welcome to the first day of understanding. Today, we dismantle the greatest lie ever sold to the seeking heart. The lie that enlightenment is a gentle drift into a sea of bliss, accompanied by the soft chiming of bells and a feeling of perpetual serenity. It is a comforting fiction, and it is poison to the soul that is truly ready to awaken. The truth, the monumental, earth-shattering truth, is that for the vast majority of those who truly see, the process begins not with a whisper, but with a shove, not with a kindly nod from the universe, but with the catastrophic demolition of everything the person believed was solid, real, and true about their life. Let us speak plainly to you, the listener. You are here because the whispers did not work. The gentle hints were ignored. The soft taps on the shoulder of your spirit were brushed away by the busyness of everyday life. You were comfortable in your blindness. Not happy, perhaps, but comfortable. You had a map of reality, flawed as it was, and you were following it. So, the universe, in its infinite wisdom and relentless love, had to take that map, tear it to pieces, and set it on fire before your eyes. It had to close every door you were knocking on, so you would be forced to turn around and see the vast, open sky behind you that you never noticed. This feels like cruelty. It feels like bullying. It feels like a personal vendetta conducted by an invisible force. And in a way, it is. It is personal. Your awakening is the most personal project the cosmos will ever undertake. Consider the man who believes his security lies in his wealth. He spends decades building a fortress of gold, brick by anxious brick. He thinks his money is his shield, his identity, his God. The universe, wishing to show him a greater security, one that cannot be taken by markets or misfortune, does not send him a pamphlet on spirituality. It engineers, through a complex web of cause and effect that would stagger the mind, the total collapse of his fortune. It bullies him out of his financial identity. The man is shattered. He sits in the ruins of his golden castle and weeps, believing God has abandoned him. What he cannot see, in that moment of despair, is that the walls of his prison are now gone. For the first time, he is forced to look for a self that exists without the bank balance. The demolition was not an act of hate. It was the first brutal lesson in a new subject, reality. 101. The universe had to shove him out of his tiny, self-made box. Or consider the woman whose entire world is a relationship. Her identity is woven into the fabric of a partnership. Her love is real. But it is also a cage, a place where she has traded her own vastness for the comfort of being half of something. The universe, intending to introduce her to the wholeness that already resides within her, does not send a gentle counselor. It orchestrates the end of the relationship. It removes, sometimes with shocking suddenness, the other half of her perceived self. The heartbreak is oceanic. It drowns her. She feels singled out for suffering, bullied by a cosmic force that steals love. But in that crushing emptiness, in that deafening silence where the other voice used to be, a new sound begins to emerge. It is the sound of her own spirit, unheard for years. The universe had to shove her into her own depths, where the true source of love, an infinite wellspring, awaited her discovery. This is the pattern. The health scare that bullies a person out of taking their body for granted, and into the realm of true vitality and presence. The betrayal that bullies a person out of naive trust and into the strength of discernment and self-reliance. The failure that bullies a person out of superficial goals and into contact with a purpose that makes their soul sing. The universe is not a polite teacher. It is a master sculptor, and its tools are not feather brushes. They are sledgehammers, chisels, and the relentless, searing fire of experience. It will use whatever force is necessary to break the seal over your spiritual eye. Your job, in this first stage, is not to enjoy the process. It is simply to recognize the process for what it is, to stop crying, "Why are you doing this to me?" and to start, with trembling lips, to ask, "What are you trying to show me? The old paradigm must die, and it will not go quietly. It will fight for its life, and that fight will feel like your life falling apart. It is, and it is the best thing that will ever happen to you." The shove is proof that you are worth the trouble, proof that the universe has not given up on you, even when you have given up on yourself. It is proof that a greater sight is being forced upon you. The blindness was comfortable. The light, when it first breaks in, is terrifying. It shows you the dust in the corners, the cracks in the foundation, the truth of what you have built. But only in that light can you begin to build something real. The bullying has a purpose. It is the purpose. You are being cleared. You are being prepared. The ground is being made bare for a new foundation. Feel the shove. Thank the shove. It is the first fierce kiss of a grace that is too vast to be gentle. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of the Divine Bully. Now that we have named the force, let us understand its nature. To call it bullying is not to assign it malice, but to accurately describe its methodology: persistent, overwhelming, personally tailored pressure designed to break a specific resistance. The divine bully is not a personality in the sky with a grudge. It is the operative principle of a conscious, intelligent universe, as it interacts with a soul that is ready to graduate from one level of perception to another. It is the universe itself becoming the strictest, most demanding, most relentless teacher you will ever have. And tonight, we pull back the curtain on its classroom. Think of reality not as a dead, mechanical system of cause and effect, but as a vast, living, responsive organism. This organism, this conscious field of energy and intelligence, has one driving imperative for the souls within it: growth towards greater awareness, greater love, greater complexity and harmony. It is evolution, not just of the body, but of the spirit. And just as a parent knows that coddling a child forever will produce a weak adult, this conscious universe knows that coddling a soul forever will produce a spiritual infant, blind to its own power and deaf to the music of the spheres. So, it designs a curriculum, and your life, with all its synchronicities and its catastrophes, is that curriculum in real time. The divine bully employs three primary tools, three phases of pressure that it will use in sequence, in combination, relentlessly, until you learn the lesson. The first tool is removal. It takes away that which you are clinging to for identity, security, or happiness, but which is ultimately a limitation. This is the job loss, the ended relationship, the loss of status, the decline of health. It is the universe surgically removing a tumor of false identity. You believe the tumor is a vital organ. The universe knows it is killing you softly. The pain of removal is excruciating because you feel you are losing a part of yourself. You are, and that is the point. The second tool is confrontation. It places you in situations, or brings people into your life, who mirror back to you the very aspects of yourself you have been refusing to see: the critical boss, the demanding partner, the adversarial friend. These are often unconscious agents of the divine bully, assigned to show you your own unresolved anger, your own hidden insecurities, your own unhealed wounds. You think the battle is with them. The universe is screaming that the battle is within you. It forces a confrontation with your shadow, not to destroy you, but to force you to integrate it, to own it, to make you whole. The bully is holding up a mirror, and it is shoving your face into it until you finally open your eyes and look. The third and most sophisticated rule is the inescapable loop. This is where the feeling of being bullied becomes most acute. This is the pattern where you face the same lesson in different costumes over and over and over again. You leave one toxic relationship only to find yourself in another with a different face but the same dynamics. You solve one financial crisis only to have another spring up from an unexpected direction. You conquer one fear and a new, more subtle one takes its place. You scream at the heavens, "Haven't I learned this already?" The answer is no, you haven't. You've managed the circumstance, but you haven't transformed the consciousness that attracted it. The loop is the universe's most patient and frustrating teaching aid. It will continue, with infinite variations, until you stop trying to escape the lesson and instead dive into its core. The loop continues until you change not your behavior, but your being. Now, listener, I want you to pause and audit your life. Look at your greatest pains, your recurring struggles. Can you see the tools at work? Can you see the divine bully's curriculum? That period of lack was a removal of false financial security. That painful conflict was a confrontation with your own need for approval. That recurring relationship drama is an inescapable loop, teaching you about self-love and boundaries. Nothing is random. Nothing is wasted. The bully is a master economist of the soul, using every scrap of pain, every ounce of despair, every shattered dream as raw material for your rebirth. This is why shallow positivity is so useless. Telling yourself, "good vibes only," in the face of this divine curriculum, is like trying to stop a tidal wave with a piece of tissue paper. You must meet the force with understanding. You must recognize the teacher in the torment. When removal happens, your task is not to desperately scramble to get the thing back. Your task is to ask, with ruthless honesty, what part of my false self did that thing represent? Who am I without it? When confrontation happens, your task is not to blame the other person. It is to turn inward and ask, what in me needed this mirror? What aspect of myself am I being forced to acknowledge? When you are in the inescapable loop, your task is not to find a new escape route. It is to stop, sit down in the middle of the labyrinth, and say, I will not move until I see the pattern. Teach me what I refuse to learn. The divine bully respects only one thing: conscious surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to the lesson. It is the moment you stop fighting the waves and learn to swim with the current. It is the moment you look at the shattered pieces of your life, not with despair, but with curiosity, and whisper, what are you trying to build from this? That whisper is the first crack of light in the shell of your old self. It is the first faint flutter of an eye that has been shut too long, beginning to open. The bullying does not cease when you suffer. It ceases when you understand. And in that understanding, a profound partnership begins. You are no longer the victim of life, but the student of a mystery school, where the universe itself is the headmaster. See the anatomy, know the tools, and begin, today, to thank the hand that holds them. Chapter 3. The Ego's Last Stand. When the walls crumble, we come now to the heart of the battle. The divine bully applies its pressure, and the entity that feels that pressure most acutely, that screams in protest, that concocts 1,000 stories of victimhood and injustice, is the ego. The ego is not you. It is the constructed self, the mental and emotional image you have built of who you are over a lifetime. It is your resume, your personality, your possessions, your opinions, your story of past wounds and future hopes. It is a useful tool for navigating the physical world, but it has made a terrible, tragic mistake. It has convinced you that it is the totality of who you are, and the opening of the third eye is nothing less than the glorious, terrifying dethronement of this imposter king. This chapter is about the ego's last, desperate stand Understand this. The ego's primary function is survival. Not the survival of your eternal, infinite spirit, but the survival of its own familiar, limited structure. It is a fortress made of thoughts and memories. The divine bully's pressure is the siege on that fortress. Every loss, every failure, every criticism is a cannonball against the walls. Every moment of awe, every glimpse of a love greater than your own, every experience of timeless beauty is a subversive message launched over the ramparts, telling the inhabitants there is a vaster world outside. The ego hates this. It will fight with every weapon it has. Its first weapon is narrative. When removal happens, the ego does not say, "A false identity is being stripped away." It weaves a story. I am a victim of a cruel economy, a heartless partner, an unfair fate. This story feels true. It is seductive. It gathers evidence to support itself. It recruits your friends to agree with it. The story's purpose is not to find truth, but to protect the fortress. It keeps you identified as the suffering character in a tragic play, which is a role the ego understands and can control, rather than the limitless awareness witnessing the play. Its second weapon is numbing. When the pressure becomes too great, the ego will urge you to dull the pain, not to move through it, but to avoid it. This is the reach for the extra drink, the mindless scrolling, the obsessive work, the cheap thrill, the new purchase anything to create a buffer between you and the raw, teaching energy of the experience. Numbing is the ego's attempt to put insulation on the wires of transformation. It knows that if you feel the full current, you will be changed. And change is the ego's death. Its third and most powerful weapon is spiritual bypassing. This is the ego's masterpiece of disguise. When the pressure mounts, and the ego senses you are seeking a higher truth, it does not always resist. Sometimes it pretends to be the higher truth. It adopts spiritual language. It says, "I am love and light only. I am above this pain. This is just an illusion." It uses concepts of non-duality to dismiss genuine hurt. It uses the idea of karma to justify passive resignation. It talks of vibrations to avoid doing the hard, gritty work of healing. This is the ego's most cunning last stand, dressing up in the robes of enlightenment while secretly reinforcing the walls of the fortress. It is a seductive trap, for it allows you to feel spiritually advanced while completely avoiding the demolition that true advancement requires. Listen to me now, you who feel this inner civil war. The chaos you feel, the resistance, the anger, the fear that is not you failing. That is the sound of the siege working. That is the sound of walls beginning to crack. The ego is thrashing because it is dying, and it will use every trick, every ounce of your pain, every spiritual concept it can twist to survive. Your dark night of the soul is simply this: the period when the ego's narratives have all failed. Its numbing agents no longer work, and its spiritual disguises have been seen through. You are left in the rubble of the fortress, with no story, no comfort, and no fake enlightenment to cling to. You are raw. You are nothing you thought you were. You are, in the words of the mystics, in a state of holy poverty. This is the most critical moment of the entire journey. This is the moment most run from. They scramble to rebuild the fortress, even shakier than before. They find a new story, a new addiction, a new spiritual label. But you, the chosen listener, you will not run. You will do the bravest thing a human can do. You will sit in the rubble. You will feel the utter desolation. You will not label it. You will not fix it. You will not transcend it. You will be it, and in that absolute, unmediated experience of your own annihilation, a miracle occurs. When the ego's noise finally exhausts itself, there is a silence, a profound, pregnant, powerful silence. And in that silence, something else is present. It has always been present. But the ego's chatter was too loud. It is the witness, the pure, silent awareness that was watching the ego build its fortress, watching the divine bully lay siege, watching the walls crumble. This awareness does not fight, does not resist, does not narrate. It simply sees. And this, dear listener, is the first glimpse through the third eye. It is not seeing something new out there. It is the recognition of the seer within. The ego was what was being seen. The awareness is what sees. And in that realization, the bullying stops, not because the circumstances change, but because the one who is being bullied, the small, constructed self, is seen for the illusion it always was. The siege is over. The fortress was never your home. You are the sky that held the fortress all along. The crumbling is not your end. It is your true beginning. Stand in the rubble and know you are free. Chapter 4. The language of synchronicity. The bully starts to wink. A profound shift has now taken place within you. You have faced the ego's last stand, and you have, at least for a moment, identified not with the crumbling walls, but with the vast space that contains them. You have touched the witness, and from this vantage point, something extraordinary begins to happen in your outer world. The nature of the divine bully's communication changes. It is as if, having successfully broken your addiction to the old, solid structures, the universe no longer needs to use a sledgehammer. It can now use a finer tool. The relentless, brutal pressure begins to soften, and in its place emerges a new language, the language of synchronicity. The bully, it seems, has started to wink. Synchronicity is not mere coincidence. Coincidence is random, meaningless overlap. Synchronicity is a meaningful coincidence, an event in the outer world that seems to perfectly, improbably, mirror or answer an inner state, question, or thought. It is the universe speaking in poetry rather than prose, in symbol rather than statute. Before the awakening of the witness, these events may have happened, but you either dismissed them as chance or failed to notice them entirely, so consumed were you by the ego's drama. Now, with the inner noise dialed down, you begin to hear this subtle, elegant language. It is the first conscious, positive feedback from the cosmos, a signal that you are on the right track, that you are learning the lessons, that the relationship is evolving from teacher-student into co-creator. Consider the man who, after his financial removal, finally asks the sincere question, "What is my true purpose?" He is not scrambling for a new job out of fear. He is asking from a place of open, humble inquiry. The next day, walking in a park he never visits, he finds a book discarded on a bench. Its title speaks directly to a childhood dream he abandoned decades ago. A stranger stops him to ask for directions and mentions, unprompted, an industry related to that dream. That evening, an old friend calls out of the blue, talking about a project that aligns perfectly. This is not luck. This is language. The universe is connecting dots in the visible world to show him the pattern that already exists in the invisible world of spirit. It is answering his question not with a booming voice, but with a trail of breadcrumbs laid directly on his path. The divine bully is no longer shoving him off a cliff. It is gently nudging him toward a door he hadn't seen. For the woman who endured the confrontation of a broken relationship and has done the hard work of integrating her shadow, a new pattern emerges. She thinks of a specific type of healing, a certain crystal, a particular meditation, an obscure poem, and within hours, someone mentions it in conversation, or she stumbles upon it online, or she literally finds the object in her path. She has a dream about a guiding figure, and the next day sees a painting that captures its exact likeness in a thrift store. She asks for a sign about whether to move cities, and 3 different, unrelated sources, within a week, bring up that city's name. These are winks. They are the universe saying, "You are listening. Now, watch." I am showing you how connected everything is. I am showing you that your inner world and the outer world are not separate. They are in constant, intelligent conversation. This stage is deeply mystical and profoundly confirming. It is where life starts to feel magical again, but a magic grounded in a newfound sobriety. It is crucial, however, to navigate this phase with discernment. The ego, ever cunning, will try to co-opt this too. It will want to turn synchronicity into a new game of specialness, where you are the center of a cosmic drama designed solely for your amusement. It will try to make you superstitious, seeing signs in every leaf that falls. The true seer understands that synchronicity is not about you being special in an egoic sense. It is about the universe itself being conscious, and your consciousness now being aligned enough to participate in the conversation. You are not the author of the science. You are the reader who has finally learned the alphabet. So, listener, as you move into this phase, engage with this new language playfully, but seriously. Keep a journal of these meaningful coincidences. Look not just for the event, but for the deeper question or feeling in you that it addresses. Follow the breadcrumbs, but do so with a light heart and open hands, not with the grasping desperation of the old ego. The winks are encouragements to continue the inner work, to deepen your trust in the process, to relax into the flow of an intelligent universe. They are proof that the relationship has changed. You are no longer being dragged. You are being guided. The pressure was necessary to break your deafness. Now, you can hear the whisper. And the whisper is revealing a conspiracy of love so vast, so intricate, that every detail of your life is a thread in its tapestry. Pay attention. The universe is speaking directly to you. It is telling you a story, and you are both the listener and a beloved character within it. The bullying has given way to courtship. The third eye is not just opening. It is beginning to see the light that casts all these wondrous, dancing shadows. Chapter 5. The Darkness of the Womb. Surrendering to the Unknown. Just as you are growing comfortable with the language of synchronicity, just as you begin to believe you understand the rules of this new, magical reality, the universe will often orchestrate a second, even more profound descent. This is not a return to the brute force bullying of the early stages. It is something subtler, deeper, and for many, more frightening. It is the plunge into what the mystics call the cloud of unknowing, or what we might term the darkness of the womb. This is the phase where all guidance seems to stop, all synchronicities dry up, all sense of progress vanishes, and you are left in a void of pure potential with no direction at all. If the first stage was the demolition of the house, and the second stage was finding the trail of breadcrumbs, this third stage is being left in a featureless fog at the trail's end, and it is the most necessary step of all. The ego, though weakened, still harbors a desire to be the navigator. It took the synchronicities and tried to build a new map, a spiritual map. If I think this good thought, the universe will send me that sign. If I meditate this many minutes, I will receive that blessing. It turned the flow of grace into a new system of control. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, cannot allow this new, spiritualized ego to become the captain. So, it withdraws the visible signs. It turns off the lights. It ushers you into the womb of pure darkness. You will feel lost. You will pray, and your prayers seem to hit a ceiling of lead and fall back to earth, unheard. You will meditate, and instead of peace, you find a restless emptiness. You will ask for guidance, and be met with a silence so profound it rings in your ears. The books that once inspired you feel like dead paper. The teachers you followed seem to speak a hollow language. This is spiritual aridity. This is the dark night of the soul, not as fiery purge, but as frozen desert. And it is here, listener, but you will make the ultimate surrender. You will surrender the need to know. You will surrender the need for a sign, for a path, for a guarantee. You will surrender the very quest for enlightenment itself. This is the universe's final, masterful stroke to obliterate the seeker. The seeker is still an egoic construct, an identity built around the search for God, for light, for awakening. I am a spiritual person on a path that I must also go. The darkness of the womb is where the universe asks you, will you still trust me when I give you nothing? Will you still love the truth when it offers no experience, no validation, no light? Will you be here in the pure, unadorned isness without any reward? It is the ultimate test of faith, not faith in a doctrine, but faith in the essential goodness and intelligence of the void itself. In this darkness, all doing is futile. All striving is noise. The only thing left is being, not being something or someone, but just being, pure presence. You sit in the chair, and you are not a meditator. You are the space in which the body sits. You walk, and you are not a walker going somewhere. You are the awareness in which movement happens. You feel despair, and you are not a despairing person. You are the vastness that contains the feeling of despair. The darkness strips every label, every role, every spiritual accomplishment. It reduces you to the barest essence, a conscious point of awareness in a field of mystery. And it is in this total, uncompromising surrender to the not knowing that the miracle silently prepares itself. The womb is dark for a reason. It is the condition required for the gestation of something entirely new, something that cannot be conceived of by the old mind. Your old self was born of light and form. Your new self, the one that sees with the third eye, must be born of darkness and formlessness. It is being knitted together in the void, from materials not of this world. You cannot rush it. You cannot visualize it. You can only wait, and trust, and be. So, to you in the fog, I say, stop searching for the path. The path is the fog. Stop begging for a sign. The silence is the sign. Stop trying to rebirth yourself. You are in the womb. Let the rebirth happen to you. Your job is not to pierce the darkness, but to become so comfortable within it that you realize you are not separate from it. The darkness is not outside you. You are awareness, and awareness can be aware of light or aware of darkness. It remains unchanged. This period can feel like eternities, but it has its own perfect timing. It ends not with a bang, but with a softening, a gentle, internal shift, like the first hint of dawn that is felt more than seen. You have not been abandoned. You have been taken into the most sacred workshop, where the final adjustments are made to your very mode of perception. The darkness is not your enemy. It is the velvet curtain before the greatest show of your existence. Rest in it. Trust it. For when you finally stop straining to see in the dark, you will realize you have been seeing all along. You are the seeing, and the darkness too is seen by you. In that realization, the womb dissolves and you are born. Chapter 6. The first glimmer. Perception. Without a thinker, from the absolute stillness and surrender of the womb, something begins to stir. It is not a thought. It is not an emotion. It is a quality of perception so fundamental, so prior to your personal self, that it can only be described as the world coming alive on its own. This is the first glimmer. This is the moment the third eye, not as a physical spot but as the unified center of conscious perception, begins to function without the interference of the egoic mind. It is the dawn of perception without a thinker. Before this moment, you have always perceived the world through a filter. This filter was made of your past experiences, your beliefs, your desires, your fears. You saw a tree, and you saw a tree. The concept, the memory, maybe a feeling of beauty or indifference attached to it. You saw a person, and you saw a constellation of judgments, comparisons, and histories. You were not seeing the thing in itself. You were seeing your thoughts about the thing. The ego was the perpetual middleman in every experience, taking a commission of interpretation, labeling, and story. Now, emerging from the darkness, that middleman is gone. Or rather, it is seen to be a transparent phantom, a whispering commentator that you can listen to or ignore, but which is no longer the master of the show. The first glimmer is shocking in its simplicity. You are walking, and you see a leaf on the ground, but you do not see a dead leaf. Autumn is here. Reminds me of my childhood. Life is fleeting. You see a symphony of color: browns, reds, yellows, swirling in a pattern of infinite complexity. You see the texture, the veins, the delicate curl at the edges. As if for the first time in creation, the leaf presents itself to your awareness with a vividness that is overwhelming. There is no you having an experience of a leaf. There is just the experiencing. And within it, the leaf and awareness are not two separate things. They are one event. This is pure perception. The third eye is simply this faculty of pure perception, unmediated by the conceptual mind. It is the mind of the universe, perceiving itself through your senses. Or you are listening to music. Before, you would have thought, this is my favorite song. It reminds me of that summer. I love the guitar solo. Now, the music happens. It is not something out there being processed in here. The sound arises within the space of your awareness. You do not hear notes. You hear feeling, made audible. You may find tears on your cheeks, not from a personal memory, but from the sheer, unbearable beauty of the vibration itself, the truth it carries that is older than time. The boundary between the sound and the listener dissolves. You are the listening. This glimmer can happen with anything: the taste of water, the feel of fabric, the look in a stranger's eyes. In that moment, there is no separation. There is no you being bullied by God, or seeking God, or even loving God. There is only God, experiencing itself as leaf, as music, as water, as awareness. The long, painful journey of pressure and surrender was to burn away the illusion of the separate perceiver. The divine bully was not torturing a person. It was dissolving the prison walls that kept the person apart from the totality of their own being. Understand. This first glimmer is fleeting. It comes and goes. The habitual mind, like a well-trained dog, will rush back in to interpret, to claim, to say, wow, that was an enlightened moment. I did it. That very thought ends the glimmer. Do not despair when it fades. It is like catching sight of the sun through racing clouds. The sight proves the sun exists, even when the clouds cover it again. Your work now is not to cling to the glimmer, but to recognize the space in which both the glimmer and the clouds appear. That space is your true nature. That space is what the third eye ultimately is. Not a thing that sees, but the open, clear, boundless capacity for sight itself. So, when these moments arrive, do not spiritualize them. Do not try to remember them or write them down as achievements. Let them wash over you and pass. Their value is not in their duration, but in the proof they offer. Proof that reality, when seen without the filter of self, is achingly beautiful, perfectly harmonious, and profoundly peaceful. The bullying has brought you to the threshold of this perception. The surrender in the darkness has cleared the lens. Now, the light begins to come through. It is not your light. It is the light of existence, and it has been waiting to see itself through you since the beginning of time. These glimmers are its gentle hello. Acknowledge them with a smile, and let them go. They are promises of a dawn that will eventually become your permanent day. Chapter 7. The Heart Cracked Open. When Feeling Becomes Knowing. The glimmers of pure perception reshape your relationship with the world. But the universe is not content with you being a pristine, detached witness. The awakening must move from the head to the heart. The third eye, in truth, is not separate from the heart center. They are two facets of the same diamond of consciousness. Clear perception opens the way, but it is unconditional love that completes the circuit. And so, the next phase of your initiation begins, the deliberate, often excruciating, cracking open of the heart. This is not about sentimentality or personal affection. This is about the dissolution of the final barrier. The barrier of separation that allows you to feel your own pain, but buffers you from the pain of the world. The divine bully, now a master surgeon, goes to work on your emotional body. You have built walls around your heart for excellent, survival-based reasons. To feel the full suffering of the world seemed like madness. To love without condition seemed like a guarantee of being devoured. So, you loved selectively, protectively, transactionally. But this conditional love is simply the ego's strategy for the heart, a way to control the most powerful force in the universe. The universe must now teach you to love as it loves, indiscriminately, unconditionally, and without the need for protection. How does it do this? It makes you feel everything. This process is often precipitated by an event of profound, universal heartbreak. It may be a personal loss so deep it shatters your capacity to grieve in a personal way. It may be witnessing an act of cruelty that haunts you. It may be a sudden, overwhelming empathy for a stranger, or for a group of people you have never met, or even for the earth itself. The pain does not feel like your own small story anymore. It feels ancestral. It feels global. It feels cosmic. You weep, but you cannot say exactly why. You feel a sorrow that has no singular source, a love that has no specific object. This is the heart being stretched beyond its personal limits. It is breaking open, not breaking apart. In this state, you will undergo a mystical inversion. Before, you perceived beauty in moments of glimmer. Now, you begin to perceive beauty in the pain itself. Not beauty in the cause of the pain, but beauty in the raw, unfiltered feeling of connection that the pain reveals. You see a homeless person, and your old mind might have offered pity or judgment. Now, your heart, in its cracked open state, feels a surge of love, so direct it is like a physical beam. There is no you loving them. There is love, manifesting as both the perceiver and the perceived. You feel their isolation, not as a separate fact, but as a ripple in the single ocean of consciousness that you are. Your heartbreak at their situation is not pity. It is the ocean, feeling a disturbance in one of its waves. This is compassion, in its truest sense, calm, with, passio, suffering. You suffer with, because you are not separate from. This is where feeling becomes knowing. The mind knows about separation. The heart, when opened, knows unity. It knows it as a direct, non-verbal, somatic fact. You don't believe we are all one. You feel it in your bones, in your tears, in the ache in your chest. This knowing transcends all philosophy. It is the most powerful and destabilizing knowledge on earth. It will ruin you for ordinary life. You can no longer make casual, cruel judgments. You can no longer enjoy another's misfortune. You can no longer see an enemy, only a profoundly lost and suffering aspect of your own self. The divine bully has achieved its goal. It has made it impossible for you to maintain the illusion of separation any longer. This heart opening is often accompanied by a radical, uncheckable forgiveness. Not a moralistic, I should forgive, but a spontaneous realization that there is nothing to forgive. When you see from the heart, You see that every harmful action is born of blindness, of a constricted heart, of a mistaken identity. The perpetrator is simply where you were yesterday, or last year, or in a past life. They are acting out a pain they cannot yet face. To hate them is to hate a part of the whole that is in torment. Forgiveness becomes automatic. It is simply the removal of the false barrier of otherness. You may still take wise action to stop harmful behavior, but you do so from love, not from hatred. You do so to protect the whole, including the one causing harm. Listener, if you are in the midst of this heart-cracking, know that it is the most sacred part of the journey. It is messy. It is raw. You may feel too sensitive, too vulnerable, as if you were walking around without skin. This is temporary. The heart is not becoming weaker. It is becoming stronger by becoming boundless. It is learning to hold the paradox of the world, the agony, and the ecstasy without closing down. This is the seat of true power. A mind with a third eye open sees the unity of all form. A heart that is cracked open feels the unity of all feeling. Together, they constitute a whole being, fully incarnated, fully awake. The bullying was to break the shell of the isolated self. The broken heart is not the end of you. It is the beginning of the universe feeling through you. Let it break. Let it open. In that vast, tender space, you will find a love that includes everything, even the hand that did the breaking. And you will know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that it was always love, in its fiercest, most relentless disguise. Chapter 8. The observer becomes the participator, dancing with the divine. A profound integration now takes place. The clear, silent witness of Chapter 6 and the boundless, feeling heart of Chapter 7 are not two separate achievements. They merge. You realize that the pure awareness that watches and the infinite love that feels are the same consciousness, operating through two different gates. With this merger, your role in the cosmos shifts irrevocably. You are no longer an observer of the divine drama, trying to figure out your place. You become a conscious participator in the divine dance. The universe is no longer a force outside of you, bullying or guiding you. It is recognized as your own deepest self, and you its localized expression. You begin to dance with it. This stage is marked by the emergence of inspired action. Before, action was driven by egoic desire. I want this. I fear that. Or, by reaction to the divine bully's pressure, I must do this to escape the pain. Now, action arises spontaneously from a state of inner alignment. It feels like being moved rather than moving. A thought arises to call a certain person, and you call them, discovering they needed exactly what you had to offer. An impulse comes to turn down a certain street, and you encounter a situation where your presence makes a subtle but crucial difference. You feel a pull to create something, a piece of art, a business, a garden, and the process flows through you with an ease that feels like grace. You are not doing it. It is being done through you. This is the universe employing you as its conscious agent. This is not passivity. It is hyper-responsive, intelligent activity. The ego's will, which was about control, has been replaced by the alignment of your personal will with the universal will. You want what the universe wants because you know they are the same thing. There is no more struggle between my will and thy will. Thy will is recognized as the truest, most intelligent expression of my will. Decisions become simpler, not because you don't care, but because you are listening to a deeper current. You consult the inner silence, the felt sense in the heart, and you act. The action is its own reward, regardless of outcome, because it came from purity. In this dance, synchronicity becomes your native tongue. Events arrange themselves around your inspired actions with a fluid, dreamlike logic. You think of a resource you need, and it appears. You have a question, and the answer walks into your life in the form of a person or a book. Time itself seems to bend. Things happen with a swiftness or a perfect, slow motion precision that defies ordinary logic. You are in the flow. The Taoists call this wu-wei action, without striving. You are not pushing the river. You are the river, conscious of its own flow. This is also where true service arises, not as a duty or a way to earn spiritual points, but as the natural overflow of your state of being, because you feel the unity. Helping another is as natural and necessary as scratching an itch on your own body. There is no other to help. There is only the one, appearing in multiple forms, and the form that is currently you is moved to support the form that is currently them. Service becomes joy, not sacrifice. Your work in the world transforms. It may not change in its outer form, but the consciousness you bring to it changes everything. Whether you are a CEO or a janitor, you perform your role as an act of love and presence, and in doing so, you sanctify the task and elevate everyone around you. If you have reached this stage, you will know it by the quiet joy that underlies all experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant. Challenges still arise. The car still breaks down. People still act from unconsciousness. But your relationship to these events is utterly transformed. There is no sense of being victimized. There is a curious, almost amused engagement with the situation as it unfolds. You deal with it efficiently, with the clear perception of the third eye and the compassionate energy of the open heart. But you are not hooked by it. You are dancing with it. The broken car is just a step in the dance. The difficult person is a fellow dancer, momentarily out of rhythm. You do not resist the rhythm of the dance, even when it feels like a stumble, because you trust the music implicitly, and the music is the intelligence of the universe itself. This is the fruit of all the bullying, all the darkness, all the breaking. You have been forged into an instrument through which the divine can play its melody in the world of form. You are not being bullied by God. You are being God, in human form, dancing the human experience with full awareness. The third eye is wide open. It sees the dance from above, from within, and from all around, simultaneously, and it smiles because it knows this dance has no end, only ever more exquisite and intricate patterns. You are home. You are the dance. Now dance. Chapter 9. The Permanent Dawn. Living with the eye open. The dance is beautiful, but the human nervous system, conditioned by a lifetime of separation, asks an inevitable question. Will this last? Is this just another high, another peak experience that will fade? This chapter addresses the final stabilization, the transition from states of awakening to the stage of awakening. This is the permanent dawn. It is not a state of perpetual ecstasy. It is a condition of unshakable peace, clarity, and love that becomes the background of your life, regardless of the foreground content. The third eye is not something you open and close. It is the realization that it was never closed. It is the sun that is now risen above the horizon of your mind, and it does not set. Living with the eye open means the default setting of your consciousness has changed. The egoic mind, with its fears, judgments, and stories, does not disappear. It becomes like a radio playing in another room. You can hear it if you choose to listen, but you are no longer captivated by its broadcast. You know it is just a stream of conditioned thoughts, not the truth of who you are. You can engage with the practical world plan, organize, analyze, but you do so with a light touch, knowing these are tools, not identities. You are no longer in the mind. You have the mind. Emotionally, you experience a full range of feelings, but they are like weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your awareness. A storm of anger may arise, But you do not become the storm. You are the sky that holds it. You feel the anger fully. Allow it its energy. But because you are not identified with it, it passes through quickly, without leaving devastation in its wake. Joy arises, beautiful and bright, but you do not cling to it, fearing its departure. You enjoy it as it is, knowing you are not dependent on it for your peace. This emotional freedom is one of the greatest gifts of the permanent dawn. You are alive, responsive, but never again a slave to your own inner weather. Your relationship to the world of form undergoes a final, profound shift. You see the divine in everything, not as a concept, but as a living reality. You look at a weed pushing through concrete and see the relentless intelligence of life. You look at a corrupt politician and see a soul lost in fear and illusion. You look at a child laughing and see the universe delighting in itself. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is your direct perception. The sacred and the mundane are revealed to be one and the same. Washing dishes can be as holy as meditation in a cathedral, because the consciousness you bring to it is the consciousness of the divine. Every moment is an opportunity for communion. In this stage, the idea of a personal destiny or purpose softens. You understand that your primary purpose is to be awake, to be a clear channel for consciousness itself. From that being, action flows, and that action is always perfectly aligned and purposeful, even if you cannot see the grand design. You may be called to do great things in the world, or you may be called to live a quiet, simple life of profound presence. It no longer matters. You are free from the need to be important in the world's eyes. Your importance is inherent in your very being as a focal point of the infinite. You are here to be here, fully, completely awake. This does not mean life becomes perfect or pain-free. The body still ages and gets sick. Loved ones still die. Injustice still exists in the world. But your suffering over suffering ends. You meet life on life's terms, with grace and resilience, because you know that the essential you is untouched by any of it. You can work passionately to alleviate suffering in the world, not from a place of anger or despair, but from a place of love and clarity, which makes your action infinitely more effective. You become a peaceful warrior, a calm center in the storm of the world. The permanent dawn is your birthright. It is the logical, inevitable conclusion of the journey the divine bully initiated. All the pressure, all the breaking, all the surrender was to collapse the dream of being a separate, fragile self inside a hostile universe. That dream is over. You have awoken to find yourself as the universe, conscious, loving, and creating. You live now with a silent gratitude that permeates everything. You thank the bully for its ferocity. You thank the darkness for its depth. You thank the heartbreak for its opening. You see the golden thread of grace that wove through every moment of pain, leading you inexorably here to this unshakable knowing. You are home. You are free. The dawn is not something that happens to you. You are the dawn, illuminating the world from within. Chapter 10. The Whisperer and the Whisper. The circle complete. We arrive at the end of our journey, and in doing so, we find ourselves back at the beginning, but seeing it with new eyes. We began with the roar of the divine bully, the shove, the relentless pressure that felt like a personal vendetta. We end with the understanding of that same force as the most intimate whisper of your own deepest self. The circle is complete. The bully and the beloved are one. The seeker and the sought are one. The whisperer and the whisper are the same. Look back now over the landscape of your life, not with regret or pride, but with the detached, loving gaze of the witness. See the pattern. See how that early loss carved out a capacity for depth. See how that betrayal taught you discernment and self-reliance. See how that period of lack forced you to find wealth within. See how every bad thing, every moment you cursed the heavens, was a precise, loving, and intelligently crafted stitch in the tapestry of your awakening. The universe was not bullying some separate you. It was your own infinite consciousness, operating from the level of the whole, gently, then fiercely, then lovingly, dismantling the phantom of separation. You were being bullied by God, only in the sense that a mother might forcefully pull a child from the path of an oncoming car. The child screams, feeling attacked. The mother acts from a love so vast, it will tolerate the child's temporary hatred to ensure its eternal safety. You are that child, now grown. You are that mother, now wise. You have integrated both roles. You can now look at the struggles of others, and of your own past self, with this same compassionate understanding. You do not see victims and villains. You see souls at various stages of the dance. Some still feeling the brutal shove, some beginning to see the synchronicities, some lost in the dark womb, some catching the first glimmers. Your heart embraces them all, for you remember every step. Your relationship with the divine is now one of seamless intimacy. Prayer is no longer a request sent out into the void. It is an inner conversation, a tuning of your own instrument to the fundamental frequency of being. Meditation is not something you do. It is what you are when the mental noise subsides. God is not a being you believe in. God is the being that you are, and that everything else is, in its essential nature. You talk to life, and life answers, not in words, but in the perfect, timely unfolding of events. You are in a constant, silent communion with the Source, because you realize you have never left it. This is the final secret, the one that makes all the struggle luminous. There was never anything to achieve. The third eye was never closed. The love was never absent. The unity was never broken. The entire journey, with its epic suffering and its transcendent joy, was a dream within the dream. The bullying was the dream's way of shaking itself awake. You are not a person who has become enlightened. You are enlightenment, momentarily experiencing itself as a person. The person was the illusion. The enlightenment is the reality that was always there, waiting for the clouds of thought and emotion to part. So, what now? How do you live from this place? You live simply, authentically, responding to each moment from the clarity of the eye and the warmth of the heart. You become a quiet beacon, not by preaching, not by wearing spiritual labels, but by the quality of your presence. Your peace becomes contagious. Your lack of fear gives others permission to be brave. Your unconditional acceptance offers others a space to heal. You change the world not by effort, but by essence. You are the opening through which a bit more light enters the collective dream. You who have traveled this far, hear the final whisper. The book is closing, but the story never ends. You are the author, the character, and the reader. You are the bully and the bullied. You are the darkness and the dawn. You are the whisperer and the whisper. Go now and live from this knowing. The cosmic curriculum is complete, but the dance of creation is eternal. You have opened the eye that sees the dance. Now, with great joy and profound peace, dance on. The universe is not behind you or above you. It is looking out through your eyes, smiling with your face, loving with your heart. You are home. You are free. You are awake. The whisper was your own voice, calling you back to yourself all along.